This is a really big surface river. It's pouring down to the ocean, and this is very typical of what's happening now. In fact, the glaciers in Greenland particularly are really suffering a loss of mass because of this. But in addition, when you look down in some of the crevices, as you can see, actually there are rivers pouring down from the surface and actually right down to the bedrock on which the glacier sits. And actually that causes double the problem because it makes the glaciers almost slip down into the ocean. This is really what climate change is bringing, the kind of acceleration of all these glaciers rushing into the ocean. When we look outside of Greenland, we see the similar story. There are glaciers melting everywhere. And in fact, it's estimated that by 2050, the Alps in Europe will be entirely ice-free. So this isn't just a phenomenon up here in the Arctic. It's actually happening all around the world. Is it more dangerous to go down?
Now you can see the crevasse.
Have any other things changed like that?
Yeah, also ice.
People are sitting around their dinner tables all around the world discussing climate change.
It's happening here.
Actually happening here. Go straight up there, 1,000 metres. It's just in mist now. And the glacier on the right-hand side has virtually disappeared.
Those who don't believe in climate warming, they should come up here.
Climate change is a fact. We're experiencing some of the hottest annual temperatures on record. But where we see it most is in the Arctic. In fact, we've seen double the global temperature average increase there. Here in the European Environment Agency, our job is to put together the reports, the numbers, the analyses that really assess governments' performance in relation to their political targets, to tell people whether governments are living up to their promises. As a director of the agency, it's not enough just for me to experience the changing world. I need to encourage my staff to see the reality so that when we write, we are convincing in a global context and across Europe, where we are in fact the largest environment agency. And it's about creating the right political mix with the science. And to do that, I believe fundamentally we need to confront our words, our numbers, the science, with the reality of the day-to-day life of people living in the environment where it's changing and when they're adapting. And so we've decided to do something very different. And that's to go to the Arctic and participate in a multi-adventure sport race made up of 250 kilometers of mountain biking, glacier trekking, climbing across rocks, and really putting our words into action. Confronting for ourselves firsthand what climate change looks like. For myself particularly, to go back to Greenland is great, but to meet people, the local populations, the Inuit populations, are actually sensing that their world is changing day by day, year by year. But instead of just giving up, they're actually adapting. They're making changes in a way that we will have to anticipate in the future. Here in East Greenland, during the winter, the sea freezes over and it traps the icebergs within it. And then as the summer comes on and it warms, you see fragments of sea ice floating alongside icebergs from the glaciers. And it's that cover of ice that's called sea ice. During the last decade, summer sea ice has reduced by 10%. But what's more worrying is it's becoming thinner and beginning to break up. At the moment, it acts like a giant mirror, the white surface reflecting 80 to 90% out into space again. But of course, when we lose that white surface, it becomes dark, and so actually energy is absorbed into the ocean, and that just accelerates the process of melting. The summer of 2007 witnessed the most dramatic sea ice retreat since monitoring started. Shattering previous records, the summer sea ice shrank 2.5 million square kilometres more this year than on average. Weather conditions, such as the wind, obviously contributed to this, but still, an extra area of sea ice, 10 times the size of the United Kingdom, disappeared. Many scientists now believe the sea ice can no longer sustain itself. The ocean is just too warm, the ice too thin. Abrupt melting could happen, so we cannot say when the Arctic Ocean will be ice-free in summer, but it is very likely to happen well before the middle of this century.
Welcome to Desila.
Thank you very much.
This is the largest city of East Greenland.
How many people live here?
It's almost 2,000.
But the harbour, this is really the main part of the town, or?
I would say so, because we don't have roads between the cities, so that's our main transport. I think there is one new house popping up every month.
My goodness, that's a lot. And are they designed for the cold here, or?
Yeah, the home rule found out that by isolating the houses better, they could save up to 25% of the energy use.
That's very good.
And that's also with the heating adjustment and the windows and so on.
And what about the energy?
It comes from a power plant up here.
Well, this is the hydro power plant, right?
Hydro.
So you have clean energy here.
Yeah,
That's
we
great.
do, from the water. The first house was built like 100 years ago, so it's all pretty new. Do you want to join for coffee, Mick?
Yes, that sounds really great. I'm really happy to be invited for a cafe mick. This is an old tradition in Greenland where friends and family gather for a cup of coffee and some food. And it helps to keep community ties strong in this very remote part of the world. Well, thank you very, very much. It's been really nice to come into someone's house as well. It's very special. Thank you. It's now time to meet my team, 3 colleagues from the agency, and it feels really good to be all together again. Great to see you. Great to see you. Obviously, we are not adventure racers, and we're very far from our daily routines at the office in Copenhagen. We have trained as well as we could, but pre-race nerves are certainly making an appearance. Having said that, we're also excited about the challenge ahead.
Which one is the front? I guess right? No.
Before the race starts, we have to test our inflatable canoe. The water temperature here, even at the height of summer, is only 3 degrees Celsius. So even in our wetsuits, capsizing would be a serious setback, and something we should definitely avoid. On our way back into the harbour, we run into Dinas, a local hunter I met last time I was in East Greenland.
Hi, Dinas.
Hi there.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. Are you ready for a race?
Yes, absolutely, although I wish we had a boat like yours. It looks a lot more stable. So, you've been out hunting?
Yes, I caught 2 seals this evening.
Great.
Yeah.
Can I come aboard and we
Yeah,
have a
no
talk?
problem.
Thanks very much.
Help you. Yeah. Okay.
Very good. Okay, guys. See
Yeah.
you later.
See you.
So, Dinas, do you think you've seen any changes relating to the climate here?
Yeah. You see these annoying flies.
Yes, they're everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. you
Yeah, for the race we've already found that
Yeah.
they're going to be really annoying.
Yeah. You go to the south, to north. 3 years ago in the north part of Greenland, they don't have flies, but now they have flies.
Is that right?
Yeah, you can see it changing.
And what
So-
about, do they come earlier now or are they?
Yeah, they're coming earlier, about 1 month earlier this year.
Okay, have any other things changed like that?
Yeah, also the ice.
This summer, on the longest day of the year, Dinas's hometown Tasiilaq experienced the highest temperature on record, 22 degrees Celsius. So change is really happening, and Dinas as a hunter will have to adapt. Shorter winters and longer summers will have a huge impact on how he hunts, how he travels and lives in this emerging landscape. So being a hunter today for
Yeah.
you means doing lots of other things.
Yeah, you have to be combined with tourist and hunting. But as you see, to be a hunter is quite tough, like quite hard,
Yeah,
and in quite low income.
right.
And you need to have other things to do with combined with the tourist and hunting. I do like many dog sledding trips in the winter, mostly for tourists, because I like to show Greenland.
So in the winter you're on sleds and in the summer you're in your boats?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dinas.
Yeah.
It's been great to see you again.
Okay, you too.
And I'm sure you're going to see us in the race.
I'll watch you.
And you must cheer for us
Yeah.
as well. Great, thank you
Okay.
very much.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
What we're witnessing here with Dinas is an adaptation to two powerful processes, globalization and climate change, moving from a traditional to a modern society. Dinas now uses fiberglass boats and the latest satellite navigation equipment, which have made fishing and hunting at sea much safer. Of course, with less summer sea ice, tourism is increasing, and so Dinas can make more money. But winter is more problematic. The ice is thinning, and dog sledding, the traditional mode of winter transport, is now often dangerous. Local hunters have problems getting to their hunting grounds. With shorter winters and longer summers, hunters will eventually become fishermen or combine hunting with tourism. So adaptation to climate change is a reality for many indigenous peoples in the Arctic. Okay, so the day's really come. We've been training for months, but now we've actually got to do it. So 4 in a kayak, we go across the fjord, 6.5 kilometres, we go to the bottom of that mountain, and then we're going to climb right to the top 1,000 metres, enjoy the view, and then come all the way back down with the clock ticking, and straight back over in our kayaks and cross the finish line, hopefully sometime this evening. The race is on, you really feel the adrenaline flowing, and particularly when you see all of the kayaks going across the fjord with all the safety boats. It's a great feeling, and it's something that you can never repeat. Well, we had a slight disaster because we all got in the boat, and in fact we thought that we were actually free of the shore, but we weren't. We were actually stuck on a rock. We realised that we were still attached, at which point we all fell in the water. And it's really cold. We're talking about global warming, but the water here is really cold. Anyway, we got back in the boat, everything was fine, kayaked over to the other side of the fjord and got changed. We were the last team to land, but nevertheless we got going. Guys, okay, we've got to race now. All right, remember, we're racing. We were just getting ready now to go up the mountain, getting changed, and then we're going to go straight up there, first stage, but I can see the top of the mountain, it's 1,000 metres. It's just in mist now, but hopefully we'll be there before lunchtime. When the fog came down, you really couldn't see more than about 5 metres in front of you. So although we thought we were on the right path, it's very difficult to orientate. So we set off in the general direction, and then there was no one to follow. So we found our way, sort of doing it by navigation. And eventually, after about an hour, we found footsteps. And then the fog lifted and we could see the peak, and it was fantastic. The climb was really very demanding and at times a quite frightening experience. Agnieszka, one of our team members, unfortunately ran into problems. She got very cold after we capsized and her knee was really bothering her. So we decided that she should go back to town with some of the race officials. The rest of us carried on, and here we are on Holmsfjord. It's absolutely fantastic to have made it. On Holmsfjord we meet up with race director Hans Christian Florian. A Danish doctor who's lived in Tasiilaq for 17 years, he's a keen outdoors enthusiast and has led many expeditions across Greenland. He's just back from his most recent endeavour in the local area. So I hear you've just come back from an expedition nearby in the local area and seen some changes in the landscape and in the snow and the ice.
Yes, I've been so fortunate to follow the conditions at a site with glacier, a local glacier, which is actually part of the ice cap, but very small part of it. But I've been able to see the changes on this particular spot for a number of years, 12, 15 years.
And just to give some idea, what did you see this time that was so striking?
Well, we saw that this year conditions were absolutely extraordinary. Soft snow, open crevasses, areas that usually were very easy to travel on skis were very difficult now because either the snow was extremely soft or had completely melted away, and there were just the ice and the open crevasses.
So even here I think you've had to make some changes to take care of safety.
Yes, on today's route we have had to ban an area where usually we could travel safely down a snow gully. We can't do that anymore because the snow gully is almost completely gone. And during the next days on the rest of the the course. There will be other places where we have seen big snow patches, easy to travel on. They are gone now.
Is it a one-off year, or do you think that you're seeing over maybe a period of 10
No,
years big
no.
changes?
It's not a one-off. It's definitely something that's happening over years, and it's gradually happening, and the smaller glaciers are going away. The bigger ones are getting smaller, and it's very clear.
Being here, looking out over the Arctic Ocean and seeing the kind of changing landscape, it's just spectacular.
And look at those icebergs there.
Yeah, they are pretty amazing.
It's not covered in a complete surface, is it? It's all the little pieces of sea ice,
Yeah.
and then there's these icebergs in it.
Yeah.
And that's what's so spectacular,
Yeah.
is to see this kind of breaking up ocean, whereas of course in the winter it's solid. But the sad thing is that talking to Hans Christian, I mean, he was talking about the race and how this was all filled with ice before, and they used to slide from here all the way down just when they finished this part of the race. They just slide down there.
Was in
It's all gone. Yeah.
1, 2 or 3.
Yeah. So in the
still.
7 years of the race, it's just completely changed. So
It changes so fast.
yeah. Okay, well, I think we should get going. Yeah?
Yeah.
I think it's time for tea. So we'll get on our way then. Great. Well done, everyone. Well, I've just come down the couloir which Hans Christian was describing, and you could see it's almost empty now. And this was apparently filled only 7 years ago when the race started. That's an enormous amount of snow and ice, and the glacier on the right-hand side has virtually disappeared. I think when we go back home, telling our colleagues about climate change, we can certainly show them that we've actually seen it for ourselves. I think. It's a great feeling coming back towards the finish line in Tasiilaq, and seeing Agnieszka waiting on the shore is a real relief. She seems to have recovered, so the full team is back together again. It was a hard day. It started in the worst possible way, but capsizing at the very start was a bit of a catastrophe, really. Anyway, we made it, and the four of us will be there on the start line again tomorrow. Well done. Well done.
Yeah, well.
So today we go out on a mountain bike route. It's pretty demanding and grueling, and I'm not very good at biking, so I'm really worried about that. So we start out today with a long, grueling mountain bike route, and then a hike out along the side of the lake to the bottom of a mountain which goes up to the glacier, about an 800 metre, 900 metre climb, turn around onto the top of the glacier, and then we have this fantastic route all the way down towards the Semmelek Fjord with great views. We'll be roped together. We've done our glacier training in case anybody falls down a crevasse, we should be able to save them, and then we get into base camp sometime tonight. I did notice that the other teams were pushing their female members.
Yeah. Last mountain bike checkpoint.
Oh yeah, actually that's the power station for the town. Oh, should we get off and have a look around?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Oh, I can't wait to stop.
So this is the hydropower station for the village.
Yes, it is. It's quite new. It was begun last year, and it's fed by two lakes up here from the glaciers and from the sort of snowfall. What's really nice to see here is a small settlement moving away from a dependence on fossil fuel to their own independent energy source, and in this case a clean energy source from power, hydropower. Okay, should we go? I think we better get on.
Yeah, check our time.
But of course globally the problem is much more serious, and in fact we see that dependency on fossil fuel taking us to a very serious point where politicians have to decide, are we going to have a world economy based on oil and gas, or are we going to move to something called the low carbon economy, even a hydrogen economy, which will mean changes for all of us. It'll be changes in the way we live, the way we make products, and in fact our lives as consumers will have to reflect that. The climb is really challenging. It's not so much the steepness, it's the fact that the footwork is really undermined by all the scree, and you put one foot forward and you slide back, you put another foot forward and you slide back. And when quite a few people have been up ahead of you, they've already taken all the good footholds away. So it's just some loose scree and mud, but it's a brilliant climb. I think that's the glacier we have to climb next. The Mittervagat glacier. So, what do you think?
Yeah, it is. That's it. But it's quite steep to approach it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether we are going to approach it from there because you need particular.
It looks like ice, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Looks very daunting.
But we will have our gear.
We will have our gear, and we've had our glacier training, right?
Oh,
So we
yeah.
know how to fall down crevasses, don't we?
How to make a
Question's
dead
just
man.
How to make
get
it.
up again.
That's right. To save you, Axel, because you're going to be at
I'm
the
the
front.
worst, yes.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
the
you're down.
victim.
The climb to the top of the glacier turned out to be a little too exciting. Andrus had a serious accident just before the checkpoint at the top of the glacier.
See this? We have a knife.
I have a system.
Here, this guy.
It's ready.
Try not to get cold. Yeah, well, maybe you want to go in contact.
3:30 was.
When it happened, 1:45, I think.
During our climb, a rock weighing about 30 kilos came loose and fell onto Andrus's finger. We had to call a helicopter to airlift him out.
You had some. Do you have some with you?
Yeah, in my
I
backpack.
don't know how long it takes. He misses the top of his finger, and yeah, it will recover eventually. He has his function, so I think he's going to be all right. But he needs to go to hospital, I think. So Heli is going to take him there, and they will take care of them. Yeah, he's going to be all right. He's a tough guy.
Oh, it's an amazing checkpoint, isn't it, with this view? It's a real shame, actually, that Andres isn't here because, of course, he's the one who works on coastal issues of sea level rise. And this is probably where we can see most of the impact of the glaciers actually melting and coming in to this fjord here.
Isn't that the ice cap over there?
Yeah, that's the ice cap. It's not a glacier. This is probably about, I should say, 1,600 metres thick here, although it's 3 kilometres in its thickest. And this covers about 85% of Greenland, so it's a really impressive piece of ice. And it leads then up into the top. Here, the local glacier, Helheim, is one of the largest in Greenland, and that is the one that connects then into the Semliak fjord with all these fantastic icebergs in front of us. I mean, what we think is now that the summer melt here up on the ice cap is doubling in the sense that there's a loss of mass that's really significant. And I think what's most worrying is that as the ice melts on the top, it doesn't just sit there, it kind of flows down the crevasses and creates these underwater rivers. So it's almost like washing the ends of the glaciers out. So here, at the end of Helheim, we're actually seeing really speeding up of the ends of that, and actually all the big glaciers around Greenland as well. So there's all sort of flowing into the ocean here. The reason why we really worry about, of course, glaciers like this is because, of course, they're on the land, and when they melt, it actually adds to the water as opposed to sea ice and others that's already in the water. So
this is one of the glaciers that is leading to sea level rise.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, if the Greenland ice sheet were to melt entirely, a very unlikely scenario. But no, I think what you can genuinely say is here and certainly two other large glaciers will be significant contributors to sea level rise. And in any case, I mean, it's going to cause problems more generally in the next probably 30, 40 years. But certainly by the end of the century, we will see that sea level rise will really be affected by what's happening here. The Greenland ice cap is so large that if it were to melt, very unlikely, the sea level rise around the world would raise by 7 metres. However, the latest United Nations report suggests that it's probably between 20 and 80 centimetres of sea level rise before the end of this century. Nevertheless, that will cause huge impacts for most of the world's coastlines. Evan, you're a marshal, but more importantly, you're also a photographer. And I wonder if you could tell me, have you seen any big differences? Because looking out, this isn't the white-covered glacier that I saw in all the pictures.
I've experienced this area now for more than 10 years. And I've participated in the race, first year in 2001. And the glacier was completely covered with snow at that time. At the same time in the year.
Right, right.
And from year to year, the black ice come higher up.
Right.
And I was extremely surprised when I come up here today, and there is no snow layer on the ice. Last year, during the race, we had some snow up here, but this year you can see the black ice has gone up to the top.
And can you estimate how much snow has gone from here?
I only can estimate. Usually at that time of the year, everything is covered with snow.
Right. Is it more dangerous to go down?
Not really, because now you can see the crevasses.
Oh, right. So before you fall in them, you can see them.
Yes. If there is a snow layer on the
Yeah.
ice, then you can't see them. Then it's actually more dangerous.
Okay, well, I'm really looking forward to going down it and maybe avoiding the crevasses because I could see them this time. But it's pretty clear that climate change, or at least global warming, is really showing itself here, isn't it?
Yes, I've never seen that before, and those who don't believe in climate warming, they should come up here.
Well, we've come down the glacier today. It's absolutely incredible. At the top it was snowy, lots of crevasses which you couldn't see. But when you could, they were very deep and you could see rivers of water running underneath. And then we've come through sort of almost baby seracs, lots of little bits of ice crystals, and then pools of water everywhere. So the surface is really amazing. It's covered with these rivers, and the amount of melting on the top has been increasing. So that's obvious from here, but also there are deep crevasses where when you look down you can see the water rushing through and in fact getting underneath the ice sheet and under the glacier itself, so that it's almost sweeping it away at the same time as it's melting. So this is really what climate change is bringing, a kind of acceleration of all these glaciers rushing into the ocean. This is one of the large rivers from the surface of the glacier that actually rushes down through crevasses and cuts underneath, and I can see the rock face down there. It's probably 30 or 40 metres at least down there, and takes the glacier from underneath out into the ocean. The Middelvigat Glacier, the one we're walking on now, is actually very special because it's been looked at and monitored since the 1930s. And in fact, since then, the head of the glacier has retreated 1.5 kilometres. More importantly, in the last 10 years, in the last decade, it's actually decreased by 7% in its volume. So it's showing just how fast the acceleration is now going. In fact, I would say even in the last couple of years, even more has been lost. So really, it's a glacier which is like a canary in the coal mine, because it gives us an early warning signal of what climate change is doing, not only here in Greenland, but pretty much all over the world. If we look worldwide, wherever there are glaciers, they are on the retreat. And to bring that home, we can look at the European situation, where we can say that by 2050, the Alps are likely to be ice-free. The disappearance of glaciers worldwide will have enormous consequences on water resources. They provide water storage for many of the major rivers, and that of course will affect billions of people. Melting glaciers and disappearing snow will have the biggest impact on the huge populations living below the great mountain ranges in Central Asia. The snow and ice act as a great frozen reservoir of water until melting in spring. Throughout the drier summer, the water is released, gradually feeding the great rivers of the region. Imagine the Ganges, the life source for more than 400 million people. 70% of its volume in spring comes from the meltwater of the Himalayas. The people living around the Ganges River basin are not prepared for the approaching effects of climate change. Shrinking rivers will jeopardize agriculture, food production, and water availability. We are now off the glacier, as you can tell by the fact that my boots are covered in mud. So I think we're off the glacier now, aren't we? Is it safe? I think it's safe to get off. Take my crampons off, I think, right now. Oh, we're off the glacier now anyway. That was quite something. Oh, it's about half a kilometre, I think. And then we get to this beautiful beach where the camp is. Ah, I reckon it's the most northerly beach. Certainly it's the most northerly beach I've ever been on. Well, that was a really long day, Anders,
Yeah.
just like you promised.
Yeah,
but it
beautiful.
was spectacular. I mean, we came down the glacier, the things that we saw, and I mean, really standing in front of some of those rivers and all the surface melting, and then just looking up the glacier and just seeing it being almost eroded away. It was really spectacular.
Yeah.
So, as a first-hand witness, I can definitely say I've seen climate change impacts.
Yeah, you have many signs here.
Yeah. So, Anders, do you think that Greenlanders are going to be able to adapt?
Yes, we are. And we are adapting. As you have seen, this is a modern community, but
Yeah.
it also have a lot of traditional values. Take, for instance, the 8 to 4 workers, which is the majority in our community. They, whenever they have time off and holiday and weekends, they go out to the fishing ground and the hunting area. So you have this beautiful combination of modern life and traditional Greenlandic value, which is why this is such a unique place.
Although, I mean, you're going to have, with the ice opening up, more cruise ships around.
We have that already.
And so are you anticipating that there will be more?
Yes, I certainly do. And that is something we will have to deal with. This is a very small community.
Yeah.
The town I live in has
Right.
2,000 inhabitants approximately, and the number of English-speaking guides is, as you probably would guess, very limited. And what we're working with in our area is a different kind of tourism that sort of embrace the Inuit culture, that is built on the daily life of the Inuits. So because these are activities that people identify themselves with: sailing, fishing, hunting, dog sledding. And so the trick is basically to take these daily activities and organize them in a different way, so you have a high-end tourist product.
Right.
So in that way the locals will earn more on tourism.
But in a way, what we're saying is that whilst all those people are sitting around their dinner tables all around the world discussing climate change,
it's happening here.
Actually happening here.
It's happening here, yeah.
And I guess the message we have to take is that the early signs are that people have to adapt. They're going to have to build it into their daily life, but it's going to happen anyway.
It's going to happen to all of us, but we are the first to face it.
Okay, well, I can wish you luck, Anders, and I'm going to
you.
get on with the race now. So
Yes,
thank you
good
very
luck
much.
to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks. All the racers, officials and their families now have a well-deserved break in the base camp, located at the edge of the Sermelik Fjord. I feel very privileged relaxing and enjoying a concert by the local choir from Tasiilaq. Half the town seems to have made the long journey here to keep us company. The local people even supply us with a delicious barbecue of delicacies: fish, seal and whale.
Happy Mother.
Oh, it's going to be a really great day. At least it's not raining. We're all ready to go through the start line, and we've got, I think, a fantastic course. And Andres is with us with a plastic bag on his hand. He's going to come with us. So we're back again as a team, sort of really pulling together. So we've got a few limbs are sore, but nevertheless, I hope we'll complete the challenge by this evening.
As long as your limbs are working, I think one should continue. You will feel like you're part of the team and part of the whole race.
Yes, it's in the mist, it's through the icebergs up the Semvik Fjord, so we're going to see icebergs from our own perspective, right at the sea level. It's absolutely fantastic to be paddling around these icebergs and flows, probably from the Helheim Glacier, further up the fjord. But at the same time, it's a bit scary, especially because we've got our captain back, but he's got his hand in a plastic bag after yesterday's accident, and we cannot afford to capsize. This scenery is absolutely incredible. We've got icebergs and sea ice all around. Some of these icebergs were formed 100,000 years ago. They're like great mammoths migrating around the polar ocean. When the icebergs were formed, there weren't really any humans about. But today, there are 6.5 billion people on this planet, and by the year 2050, there will be nearly 9 billion of us. As the human population grows, the icebergs are disappearing faster than we have ever experienced. This is not a natural phenomenon. We are responsible for changing the natural balance of the climate. Since we've been here, it's pretty clear that there are two types of change that are colliding: globalization and climate change. And there's a sea change here in the local population, moving away from sort of day-to-day adaptation for survival to a longer-term picture. When we reflect on what's happened over the last few days, it's very clear that we need to give a strong message that people have to pay attention to nature. Thinking in the long term is about adapting. Climate change is going to happen, and there will be irreversible changes. When the icebergs are gone, they're gone. But what we have to do today is we really have to challenge governments to come up with solutions to limit the impacts of climate change, and at the same time consider very seriously how we as individuals are going to build climate change into our everyday lives.